All right, everyone, apologies being late, some technicalities, some technical problems. I am Gustav Wind, and I'm going to be your host today of today's webinar. I am the VP of Sales here at Grunt, and I have a former career as a management consultant at Accenture, where I worked for almost 7 years, where I produced my fair share of slides. After that, a few years back in time, I decided to jump onto this fantastic journey that we had on Grunt so far. This is the second webinar in our series. Last week, my dear colleague Mats had a first session, and these sessions will now recur on a weekly basis going forward. Today's agenda basically have 3 bullet points that we're gonna walk through together. First one is that I would just give you a super brief introduction of Grunt, who we are and what we do. Secondly, we will jump into Grunt, and I will show you some very specific use cases of hopefully how Grunt can, which will help you in your Grunt journey in your day-to-day, hopefully. And after that, circa 10 to 15 minutes in the end, we will have a Q&A session as well, where you are more than welcome to ask questions in live chat. So feel free to type in your questions during the demo or when the Q&A session starts in the end. So let me share my screen with you. So as you probably know by now, we have created a PowerPoint add-in, which will enable you to, one, speed up your work and be more effective during your workday. Two, Grunt will enhance the quality of your slides. And 3, maybe even most importantly, Grunt will enable you to focus on creating real impact instead of copy-pasting, formatting, and tedious alignment work as such. So spend time on what matters in your workday. So Grunt is created by industry experts with years of experience from management consulting, finance, and also from larger corporations. We are PowerPoint experts by heart and have produced a fair share of slides, as I mentioned in the beginning, in our former careers. What we have learned out in our fingertips is the importance of data visualizations and visual storytelling. And this is where one should spend time on when working in PowerPoint, not the repetitive and unnecessary tasks. Moreover, we are automation specialists, and our philosophy is that computers should do the absolute most possible work for the user, and we can focus on being creative and telling the story in the deck. Finally, given that we live inside of Microsoft Office, we are very familiar about the limitations as well as the possibilities that Microsoft possesses. So just like to spend 30 seconds on who this public demo is for. So if you're new to Grunt, this is a perfect case. If you have used Grunt, so what? A little bit back and forth in your day-to-day. This is also a great public demo to attend on. Jumping into even more specific, very advanced use cases, we will do that further down the road. But hopefully you will learn something new today regardless. So focus of today's session will be on our industry-leading Excel connection, which is frequently used on our charts and tables. And I just want to be very, very clear here that visual grids, as you can see up in the top here next to charts, is our tables. These tables, you can basically connect them to Excel with your data, and you can then put visualizations on top. And I'm going to show you a couple of use cases here. Another thing I think is worth mentioning here while working with charts and tables is that your brand, your color scheme, and your font, etc., will automatically be built into the charts and tables. I can finally mention here as well that after being on a 1,000+ client calls, I realized that there are way too many people out there that are unfortunately copy pasting charts and tables, which of course put one at the risk for manual errors, break of the native Excel connection, etc. As few examples. It might occur, for instance, if you're moving your file on your computer, sending the file to someone else, or it can also, given my experience, just break for simply no reason, which is very unfortunate. Therefore, we put some extra effort into developing Grunt's robust Excel connection. So this is what we're going to focus on today. I just want to spend 30 seconds here as well for new users on this public live demo. The Grunt tab looks like this. So we do have a template library, Gantt, agenda, etc., etc. But focus for today, as mentioned before, will be on the visual grid or our tables, our charts, and also this separate section that we have for our Excel connection. So these three sort of Grunt buttons goes hand in hand. So I'm going to show you three things here now, basically, and I'm going to build this from a minimal level, and then you can see an overall use case. So the first thing I'm going to do is to link some data from Excel into a chart. After that, I'm going to link a table, and then we're going to have a look on a larger data set and see how the Excel connection works when updating everything in one swipe. So if I'm going into to Excel, and just to create some kind of familiarity here as well, you're probably very familiar with this kind of way of working, where you create a native Excel chart, you copy paste it into PowerPoint, and you can challenge me on this one, but given my experience, it can be kind of tedious to do the same kind of type of formatting every time on these charts, especially if you need to do this all over again throughout your whole deck. That can take plenty of time. Using Grunt, what you do instead is simply that you copy the data that you have in Excel. Thereafter, you jump into PowerPoint. You click on charts, and you see this little check mark down here indicates that I now have data on my clipboard. So this means that the chart that I'm inserting here now will then be populated with this data. And I will also here create a link to Excel. So when I have this chart now selected, you see out here on the right-hand side that this bottom here turns green, which indicates that I have established the Excel connection. So if I jump into Excel, if I just do one simple change on the data, you see Grunt immediately pulls in the data into the charts, and you can be 100% sure when you clicked update that your chart is now populated with the data to Excel. And you also get this verification up here on that. A couple of other things I'm not going to spend too much time on, but there is a couple of other features in Grunt that the native PowerPoint does not possess, such as Kager and the value jump. I'm going to leave the chart here for now, but if there are any questions in the end, I'm just going to go back to this slide, and we can take questions as we go. Let's try to link in a table So if I go into Excel, and it's the same procedure here. I grab my data set that I have in Excel, and as you're probably familiar with native PowerPoint, it may look like this. And if I'm changing the data now in Excel, sometimes it's a real struggle to actually get the new data in, right? So again, what we've done with Grunt is that when you have your data copied from Excel and you hit Control Paste on your keyboard, you will then be able to insert the table. Now, same as with the chart on the prior slide, if I have this table selected, I see out here on the Excel connection, it turns green, and I'm up to date with my data. So exactly the same thing here. If I update one figure, Grunt will immediately pull that data point in, and you will also be able to see all of this if you go up to connections. As you see, my data is up to date in my stack column chart, but in my visual grid, I have new data, but I haven't pulled it in yet. It's just showing in the user interface. So if I either click one by one on the charter table, as I did with the chart, or I can click update all here to pull in my data into my presentation. When it comes to financial tables, given my experience, it can be kind of tedious, extra tedious compared to the charts. Sometimes one is copy pasting the charts, either the whole chart itself in a PowerPoint presentation, or one is copying the data and paste it into a chart in the PowerPoint presentation, sometimes using a different add-in. When it comes to tables, we think this should be extremely easy to manage. So what I'm going to show you now is simply I'm going to add 4 simple formats in the table. So by learning how to do this, you can say that you have learned a huge part of what you can do with the financial tables in Grunt. So what I'm going to do now is to just select a couple of rows where I want to do my, or I would like to add my formatting. In this case, I would like to do these rows bold. I would also like to add borders into my financial table. So if I click out here on the plus where I add the formatting into my table, a list will show with some alternatives where I can actually apply into this table. So the mindset here is to think, okay, what is it actually that I would like to add into this table? In this case, okay, it's bold, then I can type in bold. Didn't find any bold, but we find the font here, meaning that the bold should be included. So if I click on bold here, you see row 1, 4, 7, and 12 will now be bold. Same thing if I'm adding a different one. And as you see here, you can also hit Control Enter to add formatting instead of clicking on the plus. We will do on the next round. But you can also add borders. So if I now add some borders to my table, it looks like this. I said that we would like to add 4 different format rules to this one. So now we added 2, right? So now let's try to do the quicker method. So if I'm selecting column B here, and I would like to highlight the actual column here, which is very often higher when creating the financial tables. So if I'm selecting column B, I'm hitting Control Enter on my keyboard. And if I search for fill will be applied to whole column B, right? And then I can change it into a different color. That was formatting number 3. Let's do one final thing to just make this look slightly better. These actual, budget, delta, etc., are not perfectly aligned, right? So selecting row 1, hitting Control Enter, and searching simply for an alignment formatting. This might help you to align. But now, okay, this one out here, I'm not 100% satisfied that this one should follow the rest of the words here. So I will simply exclude it. So you see here now, I included row 1, which is turned yellow. And then I would like to exclude a cell A1, right? Or so now I added 4 different type of formatting into my financial table, and it's starting to look. I'm not going to deep dive even more into this now. Of course, you're welcome to ask during the Q&A. So third thing and final thing I'm going to show you now is that if you imagine that you have a larger report with plenty of charts and tables where you have linked your data into your Excel spreadsheet. So taking this as an example, you have some classic financial KPIs, which I assume quite many on the webinar is familiar with. And now if I go up here to Excel connections, I remember what we did just a few minutes ago. And now in this case, there are more charts and tables linked into this presentation. And in this case, it's this Excel spreadsheet, financial data version 1. So if I go into financial data 1, which means that all this data is now linked into my PowerPoint presentation. Now, let's see what this looks like if I were about to update all my connections. So there are basically 2 things that can happen here. One thing is that I go straight into the Excel and I punch in new data on every single cell here. Recall what we did before with the chart and table that we together linked up into the presentation. It's the same mechanism here, and then we can just click Update All. Second thing, you also have the possibility here to actually swap out the whole file, meaning that I have financial data version 1 here now, and I also have financial data version 2 here. File look the same, but the data is so if I click up here on change file, I localize the new version, and if I update with this data, you see everything in the presentation will then be updated as well. So either you punch into the existing Excel file, or you can simply replace the file. And a very, very common question one probably ask then is that, okay, does the new Excel file need to look exactly the same? And the answer to that is, well, if it does, that's great. If it doesn't, no problem. Because what Grunt can do, if you in your second version have new columns coming in here, for instance, or new rows coming in here, there is a mechanism inside of Grunt, which is called the greedy feature, which can pick this up automatically, which means that you can simply lean back and click Update All, and Grunt will do all the Grunt work for you, so to say. Greedy feature, I'm not into details now, but perhaps this will be covered in the next or a webinar after that. So, couple of final things before we move into the Q&A session. If you think what you just saw would be helpful in your day-to-day, you're more than welcome to just schedule a chat with us. Goal of this chat would just be to talk through your current challenges, your current tool stack, what goals you have, and also together find out if we're actually a fit and could potentially work together. Feel free to reach out. And as mentioned in the beginning, our next webinar or public demo will occur on next Wednesday, same time, and on a recurring basis, it will happen the following weeks as well. One final thing I would like to mention, since we get this question quite frequently lately. As you may know by now, Grunt is not working at Mac. This is something that we have worked on a lot lately, and we have had great progress. And our plan is to release this this summer. So stay tuned, and we're really looking forward to have a conversation with you Mac users as well. All right. Feel free to ask some questions. Okay, we have a couple of questions here. First question, how long would Grunt spend on updating a full presentation with new data? I saw this message was sent 10 minutes ago, and hopefully, Christian, you got this answer when I updated with the new file and updated everything in the PowerPoint presentation with one click. Hopefully you got that. Great. Thanks for the question. Great one. And then I see that you have started from Excel when connecting to a chart. Is that best practice, or should I build a chart first and then connect? This, Colleen, is also a great question. Of course, it depends on what type of workflow you are used to. There are different possibilities here. I can show you also here. If I just insert one chart, you're probably aware of that you can push the data. And I assume your question goes here a little bit, okay, what is considered as best practice? I would say it's up to you, but given my experience and what I prefer to do here is to always start in Excel and link the data into PowerPoint. Excel is an extremely great tool for both running formulas and sort of massaging the data, and the design lives in PowerPoint. Therefore, I think it's really convenient to start in Excel and then link everything into PowerPoint. Great question too. Okay, another question here. Do my colleagues need to have Grunt to make updates in the Excel and have that reflected in the PowerPoint? So okay, so your colleagues, if I understand this question correctly, apologies if not. Your colleagues do not need to have Grunt if you're updating the data in the Excel. So Grunt lives solely in PowerPoint. So for instance, if you're working on SharePoint, on a shared Excel spreadsheet, your colleagues can play around and edit the data as much as possible, and you can still pull in the data with Grunt in PowerPoint. I hope that answered the question. Great to hear. All right. Any more questions? Feel free to fire away. And if you come up with any questions after this public demo, feel free to send us an email or give us a call. And we're more than happy to have a conversation with you and your team. Okay, one more question here. Is there a link to get in touch with you? Yes. So what you can do is to send an email to this email address, sales@grunt.pro. I think that's definitely the most easy way. All right, everyone. Again, I encourage you to have a look at the upcoming webinars, and I wish you a great afternoon going forward, and take care.